So today's video is going to be the second anxiety talk video that I'm going to be doing. I got an overwhelming amount of responses from you guys, mostly questions and also some comments and just feedback in general that I really appreciated. So I thought I would do a kind of second episode, I guess, and I'm not sure if this will turn into kind of a series on my channel or not, or whether I'll just do these videos kind of randomly when things come up, or I'm not really sure how that's gonna go yet. But I did like that you guys wanted to talk about it because it is something that is very important in my life and very important in many teenagers and just many people's lives in general. So I did want to keep the conversation going and keep that communication line open. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm pretty much just answering your questions and feeding off of what you guys had to say. So I do have my laptop in front of me, so if I'm looking down, that's why. Because I wrote down the questions that you guys responded so that they're all in one place and so that I can just kind of quickly refer to them and then get back to talking to you guys. So kind of I got asked a lot of questions, but they were all kind of, or most of them are kind of like around the same things. So there were kind of like a few main topics that people wanted me to talk about. And they're very general topics that I knew I'd get asked as soon as I made a video regarding this. So I'm not surprised that I got asked them at all. But they were kind of things that I didn't want to touch on in my first video because they are very personal. But also very helpful for other people. So I'm just going to stop rambling and we're just going to get started with the questions and my answers, and we'll just kind of see what happens. Okay, so the main thing that I got asked was about my parents' divorce. I did mention it in my first video. I just kind of briefly skimmed over it because I don't know. It does still affect me, but I didn't want it to be kind of about, that's what the video was about type of thing, you know? So the main thing I got asked was how it affected me, how old I was, how it, like, did it ruin my childhood, did it, like, take away my youth, all that stuff. I got asked a ton of those things. So, no, it did not take away my youth. It didn't ruin my childhood or anything like that. Obviously, a parent's divorce is never going to be, well, in some cases it can be a good thing, but obviously it's not usually a good thing, especially for the child involved, if they're with both their parents at all times. So obviously it wasn't a positive thing in my life. It did affect me a lot because I was used to having both my mom and my dad in my house at all times, and all of a sudden that stopped. So obviously that's going to have some sort of a bearing on my life, and that is basically when I kind of admitted to the issues I had going on. My parents' divorce kind of just, I wouldn't say it started my depression, but it kind of led me to a point where I was like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore, kind of thing. So it didn't, I'm not gonna, like, I don't blame my parents' divorce for me having depression. Obviously, one significant event can trigger those kind of things, but that's all within you. So I don't in any way blame my parents' divorce for my depression, but it really did emphasize it and trigger it and make it kind of become a lot more aware to me that that was something that was going on. So my parents got divorced when I was 9. So as a 9-year-old, I obviously didn't know what depression was or any of that stuff. So it wasn't until I grew up a little bit, and when I was 9, I only had one other friend that had divorced parents. Every other family that went to my school was together, that I knew of at least. Obviously there's some people that won't talk about it or whatever, but I had one friend in my friend group that had divorced parents, and that's it. So it was a new thing to me. I didn't really know what I should expect and any of that stuff. So it mainly affected me because of the questions I got asked as a small child and stuff like that. So, and obviously seeing my parents upset and seeing my dad move out and all that stuff. So when I was 9, he moved out to an apartment, and for a while we just, my brother and I both just stayed at my mom's house, and my dad would come and visit us at my mom's house. So that was for a few months, and then eventually, he was in a 1-bedroom apartment, keep this in mind. So eventually then we'd go visit him at his apartment, and then eventually, once he got kind of settled and things, we would stay there for like one night at a time, because it was a 1-bedroom apartment, so me and my brother would both be sleeping in his bed, and he would sleep on the couch. And then eventually he moved into a 3-bedroom apartment where we could stay with him a little bit more, not permanently, but we would stay with him a little bit less than half the time, so probably about 40% of the time. So that was very different. Obviously, it was very, very good that both of my parents lived in the same town. That is one thing that I think I had so lucky, that both my parents stayed within my town that I was growing up in. I didn't have to kind of commute or leave my friend group or anything like that. Like, I didn't have to schedule days that I could hang out with my friends or that I could have my friends over. Like, I was always in the same town. So that's one thing that I'm super, super grateful for looking back, is that neither of my parents left the town that I grew up in. Later, my dad did, but for my childhood, he stayed within my town. So that is one thing that really helped me, is that I was always able to kind of escape and go to my friends or whatever kind of thing like that if I was triggered or anything like that. So that was the main thing that happened immediately when my parents divorced. They did not have a good divorce, to say the least. I'm not going to explain kind of a lot of the things that happened, because that's their business. It's not really my business to share. But it did really affect my mental health a lot. There was a lot of battle, like kind of back and forth. There was just a lot of hardship and a lot of heartache, and that affected me obviously as a kid, and as a young adult. I was growing up and going to high school, and at this point I was not seeing one of my parents at all, because I had a falling out with them. So that is the first time that I was ever hospitalized. I don't want to talk too much about it, just because that is going a little more deeper than I want to go in this video. But I was classified as suicidal, and I was on a suicide watch for about a week. I wasn't allowed to be alone, any of that stuff. So that was in grade 10. So that's kind of as far as I'm gonna go with my parents' divorce, just because it's not my business really. I said how it affected me, but I'm not gonna explain kind of what happened. So I hope that is kind of helpful at least. I know divorce can be so hard on children, and it breaks my heart. I hope that no children have to go through what I had to go through in my parents' divorce. It was absolutely terrible. Like, it was awful. I don't wish it upon anyone ever, like, and still to this day my parents don't get along, and I don't wish the place I'm in among anyone else. But it's what I've learned to deal with. So high school. I got asked a lot of questions about high school, and about if I liked high school, if I thought high school was like something that triggered my mental health. I absolutely hated high school. Mainstream high schools struggle to accommodate mental illnesses, in my opinion, just because when I started high school, it wasn't talked about at all. I went to a small high school of like 1,200 kids, which may not seem like a small high school, but we all came from different towns, so it was a small high school because we were all kind of feeder schools into this one school. So it was all very small towns coming together kind of thing. So I did not do well I did well in high school grade-wise, but my high school at least was all about social aspect, and it was all about partying and drinking and going out every weekend, and I just wasn't into that at all. So I was an outsider, because that's not what I like to do. I didn't like to go out and get wasted every weekend and stuff like that. I couldn't do it with my anxiety. I didn't have a choice. I tried to do it. I tried to go out and party with my friends, and it was not a good idea for me. So, high school, I think, is obviously a learning experience, and for someone with a mental illness, I think you have to have your strategies in order before you enter a high school, which can be hard, and counselors and guidance counselors and teachers can be a great resource. That is literally how I survived high school, was my guidance counselor. So use the resources that you have, use the resources that are available to you, because they are available to you. You do have to dig a little bit harder for them, but they are available to you. Use them to the best of your benefit, because if you don't ask for them, you're not going to get them. Like, high schools don't reach out to make you feel welcome, kind of thing. You have to kind of pave your own way and figure it out for yourself. And that's what me and my parents did for my high school experience. Otherwise, I don't think I would have finished high school. Not in the mainstream, like how you're supposed to do it. I would not have been able to do it. Another question I got a lot was, how did my parents react? And I'm gonna guess this is, how did my parents react to me kind of asking to go to the doctor about depression, or kind of something like that, like asking to be counseled or whatever. My parents are very supportive. Like, they wanted to do everything they could to help me, but it was a learning process that all of us went through together, because nobody in my family that I had known of had come forward with a mental illness, so it was an unknown thing. Like, they were learning as I was learning, so it was a very different experience, and I didn't expect them to know what to do, but they did everything they possibly could to help me, and I'm very grateful for that. My mom especially took off work. She was just with me 24/7. Like, I'm not joking. If it weren't for her, obviously I wouldn't be alive, but if it weren't for her doing what she did in my teenage years, I would not be sitting in front of this camera talking to you anymore. I had a full out plan of how my life was going to go, and it was going to end before I was 18. So there's that. What did you find most helpful? I found that counseling was extremely, and continues to be extremely helpful. Just having an unbiased party to talk to that has no idea about your situation is so important to me. A counselor doesn't bring up someone they know from your family. Your counselor doesn't bring up something that they heard or anything like that. They're just based off what you tell them. And I found that having someone to regularly check in with each week that forced me to talk about the things that were on my mind was really helpful, because it forced me to work on my issues on a regular basis instead of when things became too hard for me to handle. Like, I wasn't just kind of building and building and building and building until I blew up. I just continued to work through my issues every week on a weekly, or even sometimes a twice weekly basis, and that was just what I did. And every time that I would have an issue, I would have someone to talk about it to, that wasn't going to judge me or wasn't going to ignore me or anything like that. So that is the one thing that I found extremely helpful. If you're not going to do anything for your depression, like you don't want to tell your family or anything, just go see a counselor, please. They're so incredibly helpful. And they're such a great resource. At many high schools, they are free. You don't have to tell your parents. You don't have to tell anyone. You can just go in during school hours and you can use them as a resource. You don't have to go through your parents' benefits or anything like that. Many schools offer that, and even many colleges offer that. So check it out with your guidance counselor, or if you are just not in school, just research it and research what's available in your town and kind of stuff like that. I know there's tons of resources. There's also helplines and crisis lines that are geared towards people that can't afford counseling, or that can't get to a counselor, or that's in people that are in crisis or anything like that. So if you're not going to do anything, just please reach out to a medical professional in some sort of way. A doctor, or a guidance counselor, or a professional counselor, therapist, because they are there to help you. That's literally their job. So at first I didn't necessarily, I told my parents, but I didn't tell my parents a lot. I just talked to my doctor, and that was all that I did, and that's how I started my journey to recovery. And a lot of people asked if I'm still recovering, and yes, I still go to therapy once a week, at minimum, and I still do struggle. I'm still on medication. I'm still struggling with self-harm, and that is kind of an addiction. That is something that I wish that was never broadcasted on social media or anything like that, because I feel that those kind of things actually pushed me to self-harm, because they were so, glamorized, or I don't know what the word is, but they were just so talked about. And that's how I found out about it. I didn't know what self-harm was before I went on the internet and looked for it. I didn't know what it was before it was put in pamphlets for guidance counselors. I didn't know what it was. I was 15. I still have them. They're still there. I'm not going to show you up close because it's kind of personal. But they will forever be on my body, and I wish they weren't. They are something that I can deal with later in life. I can cover them up or whatever, but I truly wish that I never discovered self-harm, because I wish I discovered an easier coping method that I found earlier than self-harm, because now it is very difficult to stop, to be honest. It's the first thing I turn to because it's the easiest and it's the most effective coping mechanism that I was introduced to at a young age. And I don't know, just everyone asked me about it, and I was like, no, I don't know what this is. And then so I got curious about it, and I started researching it, and I tried it, and I have yet to be able to stop. So if you're looking into ways to cope, stay away from self-harm, please. I don't know what to say about that, but I really wish I never discovered it. I know it's a stupid reality that I'm not gonna never discover something, but I really wish that I was given some more tools, and that wasn't one of the tools, basically. I'm not saying a counselor encouraged me to do it, but it was never really frowned upon, to be honest. It was, but it wasn't. Every counselor understands it, so I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, obviously, but everyone has their own opinions on it. Unfortunately, it does help me a lot, and the people in my life do know that and do see that and don't get threatened by it or anything like that, but that's all I'm really going to say about that, because that's still a very touchy subject for me. Like I said, I'm still in recovery, and that is one of the things that I am not quite ready to really open up and discuss with the internet, basically. So those were basically the questions that I got asked a ton. I hope this video was helpful. I know it's basically just going into depth on what some of the topics I discussed in my first video. I plan on doing another anxiety-based video on strategies that help me, and DIY things that you can make that help me with my anxiety. Because those are tools that I actually still use, are things that I made in therapy, and that you can make that are really cute, and they don't have to be looked at as therapy tools. So I am going to do a video based on that. I'm not sure when, sometime in the future, but I am excited for that because I know it's going to be a very helpful video, and it also is kind of my other kind of passion is DIY type stuff, and I haven't got to do any of that on my channel yet, so I'm really excited for that. And the only thing I can really say is, if you do need help or you feel you need help, is to reach out and get help. You're not alone, and you shouldn't be silenced because you have a mental illness, or because you're struggling, or because you think you're weird or you're abnormal because of your thoughts. That's what happened to me, and that is why I got so deep into what I got into. Is because I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want anyone to think I was weird. So that is one thing that I am glad that society is working on, is talking about it. And the only thing that I can say is to talk about it to someone, at least one person in your life, because it really can save your life. It saved my life. I would not be sitting in front of you if I didn't open my mouth about it. And a lot of people, they're in the same boat. If they wouldn't have opened their mouths about it and talked about it, they wouldn't be here today. So I just want you to know that I love you all, and if I can help you in any sort of way, please reach out to me. You can talk to me through Twitter, Facebook, on Instagram. You can message me on YouTube, anything you'd like. I'm always here for anyone that is willing to talk about it. I'm an open book when it comes to this kind of thing because I've been through it for so many years that I just want to help and share my story, and hopefully my story helps others. So if you don't contact anyone else, I'm not saying I'm going to be a professional to you or anything like that, but I'm one of those people that you can contact if you want someone to talk to, or you just feel like you relate to me or anything like that. So I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.